Okay, welcome everyone. In this video, I want to continue our discussion with how we can extract certain elements out of a matrix that we've constructed in R. So in this case, we're going to work with the matrix B that we created in the previous example from the previous video. So if you haven't worked through that previous video, you would just want to go back up here and define this matrix B. And we'll use this matrix B as our motivating example down here. So here's this same matrix B. And so up until now, we've been talking about, okay, what if I want to keep all of the values in row 2 and row 3, and columns, 1 and 3 or something. So we've been talking about ways that we can index by pulling off all of the values in certain rows and columns. But what if I just want to pull off some random values from this matrix? So let's say I want to pull off, let's say, the entry that has indices row index 1, column index 2. So that would be this value right here, right? This is sitting in row 1. That's what this is corresponding to. And then column 2 over here. So this first value is the row index. This is the column index. And then I could do the same thing over here. Let's say I want to pull off the entry in row 3, column 1. That's this one right here. And then lastly, let's say I want to extract the entry in row 4 and column 3. So that is this one right here. And so one way that we could do this is by running each of these commands separately. And by each of these commands, what I mean is these right here. So B12, if I run this, is going to pull off the 5. And then B31 is going to pull off the entry in row 3, column 1. And B43 is going to pull off the entry in row 4 and column 3. So that pulls off those 3 values that we had just circled before. So I can do this one by one by one. If I had like a whole bunch of values that I wanted to extract from this matrix, then rather than run this, 10 separate times to get these 10 separate values, what we can do is organize our indices into a matrix where each row of this matrix is going to be correspond to one element that I want to extract from this matrix. So let's say in this case, I want to extract 3 values from this matrix. It was this one over here, this one over here, and this one over here. Then for each of these 3 values, I enter a row in a matrix. And the first entry in that row is going to be the row index that I want to keep. So in this case, this was sitting in row 1 and column 2. So I'm just going to take this information that I had, and that's going to be my first row of the matrix. For this entry over here, this number 3, which corresponds to row 3 and column 1. So that's what we got when we run this one over here. That's going to give me my second row 3 and 1. And I don't put commas here because these are just different entries in row 2. So this is going to correspond to the row and column index for the entry number 2 that I extract out. And then entry number 3 in this case had a row index of 4 and a column index of 3. So what I can do is define a matrix that contains my indices. So each row of this matrix is going to correspond to a different number that we're going to extract from our matrix, which is B in this case. And then in this row, we've got a pair of values that tell us the row index and the column index of the value we want to extract. So that's what this code cell down here is going to do. It's going to create this matrix by column binding. So I have one vector of values 1, 3, and 4. That's a 3 over here. Sorry, I'm drawing with my finger. And now I have a second vector, which has values 2, 1, and 3. And we're going to column bind these together. So that means this first matrix 1, 3, 4, that's the first column. This next matrix 2, 1, 3, that's my second column. I bind them together, and that's going to set up a 3 by 2 matrix like this one. And I'm going to call that 3 by 2 matrix POS for position. So I'm going to clear out my drawings here since I think I've got a little bit of a busy screen. And I'll run this code cell down here, and that creates this matrix of indices. So this first row means we're going to extract the entry in the matrix that has row index 1 and column index 2. And that's going to be the number 5 that sits in row 1, column 2. Then this next row of the matrix, which has 3, 1, is telling me the indices for the next thing I'm going to extract, which is going to be in row 3, column 1. So that's this value 3. And then my last row of this POS matrix has values 4 and 3, and that means we're going to keep the entry in row 4, column 3, which is the 12. So I've stored all of these indices rather than think about them separately 3 different times. I store them in a matrix with 3 different rows. And now, instead of having to run 3 different commands, B12, B31, B43, I can just run the command B POS, and that's going to pull off this entry, and this entry all at once. So this gives me the values 5, 3, and 12. But rather than output them as individual entries, this is outputting them as a vector. So these elements that I get, they're not stored in a matrix of any sort because it's not clear how many rows or columns, or if I want to arrange them in rows and columns. But it does extract all 3 of these values in this case and stores each of those values as a vector. And this is useful to do in different situations. So it's just nice to see different ways that we can extract subsets of values out of a larger matrix. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to matrix operations in the next couple of videos.